'Tis the season for those irresistible ginger thins, cozy blankets for cuddling by the fire, and making home warm and welcoming. For one-stop holiday shopping, visit your local IKEA or ikea-usa.com/holiday.
You're listening to Two Chunks and a Hunk. Movie musings for mostly everybody. Hello and welcome to Dune Chunks and a Hunk. My name is Jordan Wonders, and this week I am your chunk.
I'm Doge, and the outsiders ravage our land in front of our eyes. Their cruelty to my people is all I've known. What's to become of our hunk, Paul?
And I'm Carter, and the test is simple. Remove your hand from the box, and you die. What's in the box? Chunk.
Is that from Seven? I love that.
What's in the box? Thanks for that Mini Monday game drop for us there,
for
Paul.
real. Thanks, Paul.
That's so cool that Timothée Chalamet and Denis Villeneuve are such big fans of our podcast that they threw that in for us. That's really huge.
Those of you on our $5 Discord tier, guess which usernames belong to them. It's like the circle. Which of them is a catfish for actually Denis Villeneuve?
They both share one username, and it's Adam the Sound Wizard. Adam's not even in the Discord.
Adam's been Denis the whole time. We're like, Denis,
the
listen,
real Denis was the friendships we
listen,
made along
Denis,
the
we
way.
know you're working hard on Dune Part 1, but can you please send us back the WAV file of our audio so we can post our episode?
That'd be huge for us, Denis. Hey, speaking of huge, Doge, why are you the hunk?
It's a simple reason, really, and it's because I haven't read any books that got turned into movies lately. I'm not a nerd. I like cool things like skateboarding, pepperoni pizza, backwards hats, video games. I realize now that I'm a little bit describing that I'm a Ninja Turtle. I'm not a Ninja Turtle, but I'm also I'm not a nerd.
I like nunchucks. I like bow staffs.
I like hanging out cheese.
I like hanging out with my three brothers in the sewer where we live with our mouse dad.
Our dad the rat.
Mouse dad.
No, it's because I'm not a nerd. It's because I'm cool.
This is amazing though. When's the last time you got to just lean in and like be the person who hasn't read the book?
I've never been cool.
The only person who hasn't.
When has Doge ever gotten to be cool?
I'm Jordan. I love this book about a spicy planet.
You're gonna have every chance. You're gonna have every chance to make fun of me too. So you can even it out if you want.
I'm Carter. I love this book. It's like Game of Thrones in space, but also has some Star Wars. And I'm Doge, and I like cool stuff. I like running. I like being outside. I like the sun.
I like stunner shades. I like Kesha's discography. I'm a big fan of chains with spinny things.
More like Doge, who knows Hermes' walking speed.
This you have to give it to me. I've never gotten to be the cool jock.
You get it.
I'm a cool jock.
Jock is all it takes to be a jock. Just having not read a book for a sci-fi epic movie you just watched.
Yeah, I'm like a jock. I'm like a bad look. Could you see this leather jacket I'm wearing? It's because I'm cool, guys.
What are these muscles coming out of your neck?
So antiquated. It's just Fonzie, and he didn't even play sports.
Doge, stop elbowing the jukebox. We've got a podcast to record.
Yeah, that's me, guys. I'm just the cool one. You're going to listen, listeners. You're going to hear a lot of, honestly, just crap coming out of my other two hosts' mouth about all this nerd stuff you don't care about. Just stick with me. We're going to ride it out. We're going to be cool.
Doge has covered his room in mirrors and just keeps fixing his hair. We're
going to shove them in their lockers when the episode's over.
Here's what my own personal approach to having been someone who read this book will be. I also have the acknowledgement that I don't think a lot of people have read this book.
For sure.
So if I'm sharing things, it's just because it was special to me personally.
This movie is also definitely like an adaptation. There's way too much in the book to fit in. So, I mean.
Well, sure. Mostly because you watched this one, but
This is only like
the
first 250 pages of the book.
Oof.
The movie, by the way, we're taking a break from Chunktober, or are we? No, we are. Even though Shai Hulud, pretty scary.
Pretty scary.
We're taking a break from Chunktober to bring you really the only movie worth talking about today in the whole world, which is Denis Villeneuve's sci-fi epic known as Dune. And boy howdy, I cannot wait to talk about this. Doge, give me a synopsis so we can jump in.
This week's synopsis is written by Warner Brothers, but what do they know? A mythic and emotionally charged hero's journey, Dune tells the story of Paul Atreides, a brilliant and gifted young man born into a great destiny beyond his understanding, must travel to the most dangerous planet in the universe to ensure the future of his family and his people. As malevolent forces explode into conflict over the planet's exclusive supply of the most precious resource in existence, a commodity capable of unlocking humanity's greatest potential, only those who can conquer their fear will survive.
I'm going to super dump right now to get it out of the way.
Ooh.
Because I'm really not going to have much negative to say about this movie for pretty much the rest of our talking time. So I'm going to go ahead. It's a combo super dump that both stem from, I guess, the phrase film adaptation of a novel. There is so much information that adds to this world that is left on the cutting room floor because it has to be, and I understand why it has to be. And there's a lot of stuff that, as I was watching, I was like, oh, sick. Mentats. If you haven't read the book, you have no idea what it means when that dude's eyes roll back in his head and he's like, this is a number. So there's that kind of stuff. You don't really understand why spice is as important as it is, other than it helps navigate. You don't understand really why so much. It's not really super explained. And then on top of that, I'm gonna tack on. This is cheating, but I'm gonna do it anyway. I'm gonna tack on to my super dump. If this sequel doesn't come out, or doesn't come out for like a long time, no, I'm gonna be a sad boy.
I was reading a lot about that. Denis says he's expecting, if it's greenlit, so that's important to be clear, that the sequel has not been greenlit yet. Warner Brothers has not said we're going to make the rest of this story.
I'll say this: the chairman of Warner Brothers basically, when asked, said, "Well, you saw how it ended."
Yeah.
So, I mean,
and they did the same thing with It. It's actually kind of interesting that we talked about It last week because that pretty audaciously and boldly ended with the title card of It Chapter 1, which was the first time we knew that it was going to be a two-part situation.
That one was only a 2-year turnaround.
So Denis says that he, at the earliest, could start filming late 2022.
Woof.
Mid to late 2022.
Which is fine. We just want it to happen, right?
Yeah.
They didn't shoot it back to back the way they did Lord of the Rings.
Right. So anyway, that's the end of my negative thoughts about this movie. Let's start talking about Dune. I have not been this excited sitting in a theater watching the beginning of something in a very, very long time. It's not a secret to longtime listeners that Denis Villeneuve is my current favorite director. This is the same cinematographer as Arrival, I believe.
I think so, yeah.
I can't remember his name, unfortunately.
He's up and coming. He just was announced as a cinematographer on something else that I just remember seeing. Crap, what was that?
Not Arrival. It's the guy who did Rogue One.
Yes.
His career right now kind of reminds me.
Fraser. Yes.
Kind of reminds me of the composer for Mandalorian. It's just like this young guy that
the Batman
is doing everything.
Yes.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, he's DPing. So he's not the cinematographer. He's the DP for Batman. But still, yeah.
Unreal.
He's great.
I mean, this movie is gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
It's really pretty. Yeah.
Huge pump to the design team of like these ships and the colors that we choose, because the entire movie is brown, but yet it's still interesting to look at. I've never quite seen anything like these ships. The Dragonfly ships are pretty cool. I don't know if that's a book thing.
Sick.
Because again,
the
I'm
ornithopters,
cool.
Yeah.
I'm way too busy hanging out at the pizza parlor, setting high scores on pinball.
Like dragonflies. I don't remember. It's been
but that was
about
a
year
was
since I've read it.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, they looked amazing.
all the designs, the aesthetic of this world feels very lived in the same way I think that audiences probably felt in 1977 when they're like, oh, Star Wars, this world it's not the Enterprise, right? It's run down and old and lived in, and it's been here for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So full disclosure, I left my theater thinking that if a sequel happens and it all comes together, I think I will be thinking about last night the way that people who saw Fellowship on opening night felt.
Yeah.
Just like, wow, I was on the beginning of something.
Yeah.
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 I mean, I'll just speak it into existence. I think there's going to be, we'll finish this story. I think we'll finish this story on the big screen. I think even if it doesn't do what was projected in the box office, what it was actually projected, not Carter's projections of grandeur several months ago. I think this movie was done well enough that it'll get enough buzz, and we have seen enough influence that just general audience has on things being created. I think there's no way that we don't get part 2 of this. And I wonder too, and I have to go back and look, because really the book is in 3 parts. Has he said whether it would be a trilogy or just 2 movies?
Originally he said just 2.
Okay.
Then maybe they should stick with that. To adapt. He's taking 2 to adapt Dune, but he's planned them as a trilogy, with the 3rd being an adaptation of Dune Messiah.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
That'd be pretty huge.
Denis, I think the biggest player in this movie is the biggest player in either scenario of it being made or not, and that's Denis Villeneuve. I think if Warner Brothers tries to bully him into doing things he doesn't want to do, he might just drop, right? Doesn't it feel like he'd be the kind of...
he'd walk.
He's probably going to be between honoring this story in a way that he feels like only he can do, which... I mean, he's probably...
Because this is his dream project. I mean, it's probably 100%. Important to note that he's wanted to make Dune his entire career.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you can tell. Again, we don't really get to know exactly, even after we see the titles of the people. You know, we've got like a set designer officially on IMDb. We've got a director, our producer, composer. We don't really get to know how much Denis is in this movie. We do know that he tends to just be a little bit of every bit of influence on everything that he does. It feels like he's thought about this for a long time.
He's credited as a screenwriter. He's been working on this script for decades.
Yeah. There's a lot of his sensibilities that you can see from like Arrival and Blade Runner that have carried over into this, like the way that ships hover in sort of a menacing way over landscapes, and like the monolithic structures that just sort of dwarf everything around them is very Blade Runner. Like, I don't know. You can just see the lessons he's learned elsewhere coming to fruition here, I think. And I think it works really well. Doge, I'm curious, as somebody who hasn't read the book for real, did you feel like you were able to keep up here?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, I think I don't get the explanation of the math boys. Because again, that's a nerd thing. I'm cool.
Sure. Yeah.
But
math is numbers. Yeah. It's dumb.
You know, I don't really get a good explanation for that, or the Bene Gesserit.
Bene Gesserit. Yeah.
Bene Gesserit. But I don't know that I need that. I mean, it's nice to have, and certainly when you're reading a novel, you've got the extra space, you've got pages to fill, Frank Herbert. So tell me all about brain math and mouth witches.
And that's what I was thinking while I was watching it, was like, maybe just for the story that is at the heart of this, that extra world building, when you can show me stuff you couldn't show me in the novel, isn't absolutely necessary.
Yeah, I don't really need to know why, I don't need to know why in the year 10,183, I think why it's possible to do brain math like that, or why there's mouth magic, or you know what I mean? It's just, I accept it because
let me infer.
A weird and wild story. In the same way that I don't have to know the whole history of Gondor, or the story of the fall of men, or like the first battle with Sauron to appreciate the story told in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. It's got some great story beats early. We know that there are entire cultures that don't like each other. You know, it's like, that's all we need is like, hey, they've got a rift. Here's a little bit of what the government looks like. Here's some economy thrown in. Here's some weapons. I've got to say, great job on the shields. Here's the thing. Okay,
those are cool.
So I'm going to go ahead and super pump, and I did not think that I would super pump this, but it ended up being really important to me. I super pumped the script, and I'll tell you why. When I finished Dune 2 days ago, this felt like something that I just needed to read, because of my interests, and it was just fun to have this prepared for the movie and things like that. But I personally did not enjoy Dune, the book. I think, I mean, I enjoyed
kind
it.
of a slog.
I mean, it's not just that it was, I've also read Tolkien, right? Which can be a slog.
Sure.
It's full with the same amount of names and they're harder to pronounce.
Man, that first half of Fellowship of the Ring is nigh unreadable.
Yeah, for sure.
It is so tough.
For me, it was just kind of like, I think overall, it's not like a top 5 of this genre for me in terms of like these kinds of books. But I understand its influence and I get, the impact and the story. Sure. And so when I'm watching the movie, part of my own personal experience was I was kind of getting some more clarity from the movie than I got from the book. And it wasn't just seeing things enacted. It was just seeing dynamics a little bit better. And I was like, oh, that's right. It was kind of a like calling back to something I didn't completely understand. And maybe it was kind of a leaning in on the visual learner. It was better for me to go into this world via the movie than the book, which is an incredibly unique experience for me. And I don't know if I've had that before.
I definitely found this a more enjoyable consuming experience.
I think it had to be, the script had to be, there's got to be a better word than dumbed down, but it had to make more sense in the way that
had to be
spoke.
Digestible.
Yeah, it just had to be digestible. And I do think Denis did a good job of that because Jordan, that was one of my first questions with Chelsea and Mike, who I was with last night, because neither of them had read the book. And I was like, did you kind of get what's going on? And they just kind of gave it back to me of what was happening. I was like, yeah, that's exactly what's happening. And so I think for that to be digestible was a huge deal because I think it's a really interesting, unique story. While it still has a lot of the beats that we see all the time, right? Just on a different world. It felt like important to be consumed by anybody.
Well, I think that's a pump for me as well, is that it does hit a lot of beats that we're familiar with. And so like knowing what I know, which again is not much about this nerd crap because of my skateboard with flames on the bottom.
Why are you trying to reinvent yourself? Everyone liked the other Doge.
Well, knowing what I know is I mean, most people who saw Lucas's first pass at Star Wars when it was called Saga of the Will of the Wills, The Journeys of Luke Starkiller, or like something wild like that. They were like, oh, this is Dune. Like you're basically making a Dune. And so I really like that this movie is unafraid to and unapologetically hits the beats that Star Wars hits, the hero's journey stuff in broad strokes, but even the specific of like, we're using the voice as if it's a Jedi mind trick, maybe we're using the Jedi mind trick as if it's a voice. And the moment of turn off your ornithopter is exactly Luke, turn off your targeting computer.
Right.
And that's fine. I mean, I even thought that in the movie. It took me out of the movie for a second, but I don't know. I think there is, like when Disney adapted John Carter, a couple of years ago, a decade ago, probably. They intentionally shied away from the stuff that would make people think, oh, this is kind of like Star Wars, even though both John Carter and Dune, or the novel The Princess of Mars, and Dune were huge inspirations on Star Wars, and Disney was sort of afraid to invite that comparison. And in contrast, Denis seems to not only invite and also welcome the comparison. And sort of celebrate the shared heritage of like, this is sci-fi. This is what this genre is, and it's weird and it's wild, and you've seen a lot of it before, but never quite like this.
Not like this, yeah. Which seems to be this movie's hook to me is like, but not like this.
Right.
So, I mean, visually unique. I feel like Hans Zimmer's even flexing some fresh muscles in this a little bit. You look like you disagree with me. I feel like you're over Hans Zimmer, it seems like.
Yeah, Hans Zimmer to me is great at soundscapes, and great at big, loud things, but Hans Zimmer almost never writes melodies,
That's true.
which is kind of a bummer to me. I'm a huge fan of the John Williams, Alan Silvestri, even Michael Giacchino does, kind of that old school of composing of like, let's write a 16-bar melody and develop a theme throughout this movie. And like the only real melodic thing in this movie is some of the kind of like Tibetan throat singing stuff that he does, which is very cool. And then
I'm pretty sure that was
bagpipes.
the language of the Sardaukar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the bagpipes of House Atreides, which is
Yeah.
such a cool idea. Is that in the novel?
Yeah.
The
I
bagpipes?
don't remember.
No, I think that they did. That's something that I think you get to do when you have just like regions and different civilizations and stuff. That's fun for movies. That's kind of a blank slate, is like, let's have a bunch of visceral things associated with them. And I think the bagpipes move was great. That was so fun.
cool. Hans Zimmer is an excellent sound designer. And I mean, he's won Oscars for composing, so I'm not here to say he's a bad composer. But I think his strength is
Just not
way
your
more,
flavor.
way more in the producer realm and the sound designer realm of like, hey, during the attack on House Atreides, let's just have the brass be blasting as loud as possible. And it's like, that works, but also I think we could support that idea maybe melodically rather than just sonically.
Like if it was like bum 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 bum.
Exactly.
Yeah, that would have been sick.
From
dude.
Fantasia when Mickey Mouse does all his magic brooms. I would
love
love
it.
it. But no, I mean, being genuine, Hans Zimmer was almost my super dump because there were moments where the music was just kind of unpalatable to me, which is, again, I mean, that's the most like thumb up my own butt take on anything movie I could have.
But you're allowed to.
Actually, Hans Zimmer is not
And I'm
really
sure
that
there's
great.
a ton of people that agree with you. I really enjoyed it. I kind of like, I love the super melodic, sort of like John Williams-esque scores. I really do. I also like the sort of like haunting, weird soundscape stuff as well.
I do
So
too,
into
but
both.
I
got
feel
room in
like,
my heart for both.
I don't know. I just feel like there are composers who do that haunting, weird soundscape stuff better than Zimmer because they don't dial it up to 11. You know what I mean?
This one goes
like
to 11.
Yeah, it's, I don't know.
Yeah,
I just,
I hear you.
the fall of House Atreides in particular was the moment where I was just like, this is like a whole lot of just kind of indescript blasting from our high brass and from our synths. But, it works, I guess.
Well, let's talk about somebody that isn't Hans Zimmer. Let's talk about Duncan, Idaho, Jason Momoa. This is my favorite thing I've ever seen him do.
Okay.
Wow.
I really, really enjoyed his level of charisma as Duncan, Idaho. I thought that he had comparable levels of charisma and like on-screen character as he does in Aquaman, but without the douchiness.
Without the bro.
the
Yeah.
guitar riff.
And Duncan, Idaho and Paul's relationship is one of my favorite things in the book as well. But seeing them on screen, like get excited to, I don't know, something about the scene where Paul runs up and Duncan, Idaho like lifts him and they kind of spin together reminds me of one of my favorite things in Lord of the Rings, which is the lack of shame in the male friendships to be like emotional with each other. So something about that was really, really fun. And I don't know, I just loved that Jason Momoa spent half this movie, well, half the time he's here, clean shaven, and like with a ton of personality.
Yeah.
His hallway scene, I like cheered when he stood
that was
back
awesome.
up to take out just a couple more. That's like a movie moment.
Am I
that
to
hallway
understand?
scene.
Am I to understand that he's so incredibly coordinated that he slows his blade enough to pass through?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. So
That's very cool.
Yeah.
yes, so that's the whole thing. And
They give us
don't
that
really
too. I
explain
think-
it.
They kind of do.
No, they explained the sword thing with Gurney.
Oh, yeah. Well,
when he
actually,
trains.
with Tim, the first time that Paul Atreides is touching like quickly his hand and it's blue, 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 and then slowly puts it down and it's red. I think from that moment it was like, oh, okay, you have to be slower to actually.
To me, that's a hallmark of like, that's a great show, don't tell.
Yeah.
And that's something that like, I think that's I really love mid-century sci-fi, like around that time, like Arthur C. Clarke, Philip K. Dick, all of that stuff. And I think one of the hallmarks of those kinds of ideas is they all feel sort of intuitive, where it's like, I don't need an explanation of the history of this shield generator, and I don't need pages of backstory on it because it just kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
And I'm able to intuit
Frank?
that, like,
are you listening? We don't need a 90-page index. I'm kidding. It's a book.
I'm able to intuit that, wow, Duncan Idaho's a great warrior because he's able to kill people who are wearing shield generators. Must be that he slows his blade enough and then speeds it up once it's past the shield generator. And like,
showing the darts getting through the shield generator was terrifying, especially when it gets later.
I can just intuit that stuff, though. You know what I mean? I don't need the explanation. So maybe that's a place where non-book boys like me are sort of able to keep up and engage with this. I think that's just a great job filmmaking.
And it's fun. I hope they eventually go into it. You actually see it on screen one time in the Fall of House Atreides. There's a ship that blasts another ship that has its shield active, and the ship that shot also explodes. And so the reason that they are back to swords is because the shields blow up if you hit them with a high-speed laser, and essentially like getting electrocuted with water, the explosion travels along the laser and kills the firer as well. So they had to switch back to blades for like close one-on-one combat. It's really interesting. But this movie is full of really awesome stuff like that.
Yeah, can I give one more? I'm so glad they use this as a narrative tool. I think in terms of getting educated on the Fremen and on Arrakis, having Paul watch these little videos as he's going through this how-to book was brilliant, because we don't need it. They balanced the show don't tell with just the straight up blatant tell, because I think you needed to have that in Dune. That was one of the things that I was worried about the most in terms of the on-screen interpretation of this world, and just Frank Herbert's writing was like, how are they gonna let us in? Like, how are they going to help us understand?
You either do something like that, or you have somebody who already knows this information.
Yeah.
That's one of my least favorite things, is the like, as you know, Dune is a desert planet. And the other person's like, right. And there's big worms that live under it. Right. And we have to walk slow so they don't hear us, or we have to sand dance. And I know sand dancing is a special kind of move. You know what I mean? It's like, you either do that or you open with like a big voiceover.
Yeah.
And I think this was just the right choice.
Or a crawler.
Learning as Paul learns.
Yes.
Is fun. I agree with that completely. Yeah, there's so much. I have to be very careful to not do our favorite Chris Farley bit about this movie, because there's so much stuff that I could be like, oh, and the part where they blow the
You're allowed.
ship up.
You read
with
the
all
book.
The fireworks.
You can do it.
Just the visuals are amazing. Like, I don't know. I just can't get over. I'm going to watch it again on HBO Max probably this weekend. Just now that I've seen it in theaters, I'm going to go nuts on it while it's still available for free.
Don't let Denis hear you.
I already did it one time in theaters. He'll be fine. He'll be all right. He'll forgive me. But yeah, man, there's just there's so much here.
Yeah, hearing the natives of Arrakis referred to as Fremen, and not how I read it as Freeman.
Freeman, I do the same.
Basically, I had a flashback to like 2002. When I realized it was it was Hermione, not Hermione. It was just like, oh. And then it's also like, it's Bon Iver. You know, it's like you kind of hear it. You hear it for the first time. You're like, oh, the Fremen, cool. Let's do some, I want to do some characters in general, how we would with a normal movie, but then in how I compared them in the book. First of all, almost my super pump was the casting choices. I think, these were perfect. And I love too that it felt like the Fremen were kind of a collection of cultures. I think letting Javier Bardem for one of the first times really just talk like Javier Bardem, like lean into his Hispanic accent, I think was a brilliant choice. And having Kynes, the actor that we chose for Kynes, was wonderful. I think all the casting was really good.
Liat Kynes
was the
judge,
one between
judge.
worlds.
Okay, cool.
The one who was supposed to judge whether or not the Harkonnens had fairly handed the planet over.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think all of our castings were really, really really, really good. I remember reading, as I was reading the book, and it kept describing Paul Atreides as having these kind of eagle-like features.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, so so Denis grew Tim for this.
Yeah.
He found a lab and grew him there. Gurney Halleck, I think Josh Brolin as Gurney already felt like because he kind of plays characters like that sometimes. But when he yells in Paul's face that the Harkonnens are brutal, and he's just so harsh about everything, I'm kind of sad we haven't seen him play his basilet. Is that what it's called? What's the long?
The thing. Man, I can't remember.
It's an instrument. He's also a musician, and so I think we'll get that again.
Gurney's basically a bard, like a fighting bard.
It's amazing. But I think he did.
So
a
he's
great job.
metagaming then if he wants.
He's basically
all those
metagaming.
skill sets.
Yeah.
I don't think there was a bad casting in this movie, and I was trying to look at it at a lens of just, is Stellan Skarsgård a good choice for a baddie that's kind of gross? Yeah, for sure.
Yes,
it's like
he
not even having to know the
is.
background.
Yeah, it was great.
But
That's one of those things where it's like I am able to keep up, but it was certainly strange to see
him floating,
to see him fly around and then submerge in his chocolate syrup.
His goo.
I don't super understand any of that, but again, I don't think I'd need to. Like in the Two Towers, we see Uruk-hai come out of the mud, and we just go, "They're coming from mud." I guess
they come from.
Yeah,
it's not fair, but I almost super dumped him eating.
Dude, I was gonna say we got our gross eating scene. It is.
I'm in an IMAX too, guys, and I'm just
oof. Yeah, that was rough. That was quite rough.
Floating up in like the trail of his robe when he floats up. Horrifying to look at visually.
Yeah, pretty rough.
And I love
it. It seems like to me, and this might be cynical. It seems like to me all the expensive folk died in this one. You know what I mean? We have essentially whittled down our cast to a normal movie size going into part 2. And I don't know if anybody is still alive or comes back as a Blue Force ghost or whatever, but it seems to me that we've got rid of some of the folks who would be drawing maybe a bigger paycheck than
my guess
Tim
is they had to make room for the effects budget of the second half is just my guess.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a few things, obviously, that we still have to talk about, but first we have to go to Shout Announcements. Welcome to Shout Announcements, the part of the show where we give shout-outs and make announcements. I want to give a shout-out to you, our lovely, lovely listener. But only if you rate and review our podcast.
It's conditional.
Yeah, conditional love. That's my whole shtick. Fully conditional love. I don't think it is exaggerating to suggest that the most important thing you could do for our podcast is to rate and review us on the iTunes podcast app. Even if you don't use iTunes, go over there and do it. It is huge for our algorithm. Other podcast conglomerators, collectors, podcatchers.
There you go.
I think is what they're technically called. Other podcatchers that aren't Google or Android use the Apple Podcast reviews for their algorithms as well. It's just huge.
Quick shout out to Hannah G. Cohen, who just gave us a review. Thank you, Hannah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Hannah.
1 star. Massive. I hate this show. That's crazy.
5 stars. Podcast simply amazing. I never miss an episode. And anytime I need a good laugh, I'll go back and listen to an old episode. 10 out of 10. Recommend.
Hannah.
To all my friends.
Braving the icy depths of the worse and worse and worse audio quality the farther you go back.
I love that. Okay, beautiful.
Oh, were you done?
That was sort of it for my.
Yeah, I get it, dude. I get it. It feels like it takes him forever to stop talking. I'm always like, is he done? And the answer is usually no.
Speaking of, I'd like to give a shout out to our patrons. Thank you, patrons, for your support, your economic support for this podcast.
Exactly.
You helped pay for our Dune tickets.
Yep.
And that's a huge deal. That's a really big deal for us. It's a really fun feeling to kind of walk in and just feel really wealthy, as if it doesn't even affect me.
Feels like I need to wear a suit. Like I come in and I lay my business card down. I'm like, two tickets for the business boy, please.
They know who I am.
You see that LLC on my card? I'm a business boy, and this is a business expense.
And I'm a business boy here to do business.
It's such a 50% joke, and then also 50% it's actually weird that we own a small business together.
Yeah. That's true.
But thank you to those patrons. If you're in that $3 tier, which is the most affordable, you get that extra vote at the time voting series come around. We just had that influence, that massive influence during Chunktober, and is a big reason as to why next week we're going to be doing Us as reviewing.
I'd say the only reason next week we're going to.
The only reason is because of your vote. Mm-hmm. And then also you're going to get access to extra episodes. And so we're going to be wrapping up our Back to the Future series with Back to the Future 3. It's my journey through time, first time journey through time. Carter's first time journey, I think is what we called it.
First time journey. Yeah, that's good.
And then we have the higher tier, which is the $5 tier. And if you've heard us talk about Box Office Ball, season 1 of Box Office Ball wraps in about 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we'll be getting ready to get started for season 2 of Box Office Ball, which will be our spring calendar. Wow. And if you can get in and get on that $5 tier now, or at least soon, you'll have a good chance to get in on season 2 if you've always had the hankering to do that. So that's one of the biggest things is having access to Box Office Ball. And then just the wonderful, wonderful community that has become our Discord chat. I don't think I'm exaggerating.
Listener?
I don't think I'm exaggerating when it's active every day, is it not? I can't remember the last time that we weren't.
Messages right now wishing us all a happy Dune Day.
Mm-hmm. Oh, amazing. Amazing. And it's what you would think. It's just a bunch of other chunkies that just love what they love and love movies and have a nice place to talk about all that. It's basically just a massive lobby outside of your favorite theater. And so it's an absolute worthwhile investment if you guys wanted to jump in on that tier.
Yeah, it's a good time. It's a really good time. Speaking of good times, I've been having a good time this episode. Embracing my bad boy persona, showing off all of my cool jock catchphrases like nerd whenever these boys say something about
it's a little close to home.
A stupid book I haven't read. But I think that time is about to come to a close. It's about to get thrown off a bridge, and when they try to catch me, I will break my neck. And that's a reference to the death of Gwen Stacy in Amazing Spider-Man 121.
Spoilers.
And we're going to be diving into...
we're the nerds.
We're going to be diving into every Spider-Man movie for the rest of the year. So next week, we've got the culmination of our Chunktober 2 series. And then don't you worry, we will be reviewing Eternals. And then after that, for the rest of the year, leading up to the release of Spider-Man, whichever home this is.
No way.
We're going to be reviewing every Spider-Man movie because rumors are each of these, both Toby and Andrew, are going to be in the latest Tom flick. So we're catching up with a little bit of required Spider-Manning, but it's going to be a really good time. I'm actually very, very excited for that series.
I'm pretty pumped.
If you haven't played Best Fiends, you're seriously missing out. Best Fiends isn't like other Match 3 mobile-style puzzle games. It's an action-packed adventure and a brain-boosting puzzle game all rolled into one. You play through an actual storyline, watching your fiends become more powerful the more levels you beat. So if you're tired of crushing the same old candy, give Best Fiends a try. Download Best Fiends free today on the App Store or Google Play.
Play Best Fiends. Download free.
'Tis the season for those irresistible ginger thins, cozy blankets for cuddling by the fire, and making home warm and welcoming. For one-stop holiday shopping, visit your local IKEA or ikea-usa.com/holiday.
On the subject of Spider-Mans,
thank you.
Spider-Mans, I did it off to make it funny, but now you are the one who looks silly because you corrected me.
So stupid.
Okay, real quick, I don't recall latex scary milk drinking spider from Dune, reading Dune?
I don't either.
What is that thing?
I
don't either.
I did a little double rod to Denis and this like 5-story tall screen. And I was just like, why is this here? This is terrifying.
It has thumbs.
It
Did you guys notice that it has
a people,
thumbs?
man. It
has thumbs. And I'm afraid that because they alluded to our pet, I don't think that's a one-off. I think this thing will come back and eat somebody.
Yeah.
It's like a xenomorph shillab. It's so weird to me.
So here's the thing about
That's
me.
good.
I'm not a book boy. I don't know anything. My Dune brain is completely smooth. You could see your reflection in it. It felt like they were setting it up to be. So these bad bald boys,
Harkonnen.
The Harkonnens.
they have the doctor's wife, the doctor from House Atreides.
Oh,
Yes.
I got you. I see
They
where
have
you're
his wife. It felt like he was like, give me my wife back. And they've turned her into black shiny spider person.
Interesting. I didn't think about that. So I'm just gonna do this. I'm gonna try not to do it anymore.
I love that you guys are like, interesting. You're not a book boy. We're going to talk about our nerd stuff now.
No, not that. I think it's entirely possible that you're right, because in the book, Dr. Yue, and he kind of addressed it here. That's why he was also helping. He's the one who sent Paul all the stuff. He's the one. I don't remember if they addressed it here, but in the book, he's the one that tells Duncan where to look for Paul and Jessica.
Because they gave him a tracker.
A tracker, yeah. So he basically in the book,
They say that in the movie.
he decides that he knows that they're never going to give him his wife. So like when they kill him and his wife, he's like, at least she's not in pain anymore, essentially, or like his last kind of vibe. So yeah, I could totally see this being like a,
No.
she is.
I can too, and I don't want it.
I don't either. I don't want it, but I could see it. Timothy Chalamet slaps.
Yeah. I mean,
He's pretty good in this. I
He's
think
so
he's actually
freaking good.
I think he actually might be a good actor.
I think he might be good. The oh man, I can't remember the name of the box test thing that the
doesn't matter.
Matriarch of the Bene Gesserit sends him on. That scene was incredible.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
did a really, really great job.
Major props to Rebecca Ferguson, because Jessica is a huge, I think she's the 1B of the story of Dune, personally.
Agreed.
And to show her emotion that and it could be that we're hot off the tails of Midsummer too, right?
Mm-hmm.
When it's this hive mind empath kind of stuff going on, but for her to feel the weight of what she carries as possibly having the chosen one born of her, right? Here's all this pressure. She's representing this sect of the universe's ideals on who's going to bridge space and time. You know, it's like I felt the pressure. You know, the tent scene that we have where they like cry and he's giving visions and stuff, that felt powerful. My super dump is in here.
Okay.
And it kind of is. This happened to me throughout the movie. There were a lot of really important things that I think we needed to understand and hear, like literally hear, that we got as mumbles. And I feel like we just didn't mix well, like sound mixing, like literally mixing. There were some very important things being said when Paul is having those visions in the tent of all of the scenarios that he sees, whether they end up being a true scenario or not. When he's having this box test and Jessica is outside saying for the first time, basically the tag of Dune, that it's the mind killer, and giving this really impactful little speech to herself, little pump up speech that we'll see again. I didn't understand a lot of it. And I found myself being concerned that people who didn't know wouldn't understand what was going on. And it felt too important.
That was me. I want to watch it. I wish I could have asked Alamo Drafthouse to turn on the subtitles.
Yeah.
It was pretty rough. And I mean, great performances. And I guess I don't know a way to make it stand out better other than maybe ducking down some of the sound effects. And you know, it was very difficult to understand what was being said.
There's a certain realism that you get with that, right? Because there's a lot of important conversations we have in our lives that we have to like ask somebody to clarify, or like I didn't understand what you said.
What'd you say?
Yeah, but
they don't do that in movies for the same reason that they don't take potty breaks in the middle of their adventures. Like there's a certain level of realism that
nobody ever sneezes or coughs in a movie. The thing that you'll never unsee is that anytime somebody's in a car in a movie, the headrests are taken off the seats.
Yeah.
So the
So you
driver
can see
can
the
turn
people in the
around
back
and
seat.
talk to them.
Yeah.
Yep.
I didn't even know that.
Now it's all you know.
It's everywhere, man. It's the worst.
Interesting.
Yeah, so my super pump for this movie, keeping in mind that I pretty much love everything about this, is Rebecca Ferguson.
Dude, way to go. She almost was mine. I think she was great.
She is unbelievable.
She's still in her 30s, man. It already feels
She's
like
got
she's had a career
ahead of
for
her,
a
dude.
long time. This is what Kate Blanchett felt like 15 years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It was
dude.
like, I can't believe she's done all of this already. And she shows no signs of stopping, but she's
She's
a
fantastic.
phenomenal actress.
Lady Jessica Atreides is such an important character in Dune. Like, no question, the secondary main character. Like, she is the secondary protagonist of Dune. It is important for whoever plays this role to have a certain gravitas, an emotional connection to Paul that is believable. Like, Fergie Ferg is just delivering everything I need her to here in this movie. And I really, like, when I'm thinking about Dune, I'm thinking about Lady Jessica when I'm thinking about this movie.
Does Lady Jessica kind of feel like Mary to you? Like Mother of Christ Mary? In terms of a role of like, I was kind of attributing to, it had me wondering like, what was the pressure like? I'm having this whole thing, and I can have a separate podcast if we want to do a family of podcasts for Two Chunks, where I almost want to write a book about breaking down the stoicism of Christ and the representations of Jesus, because I think we don't get to be empathetic with Christ because every movie we've seen, he's a robot, you know? And so it's like I feel like there's just so much in the text that it's just like rich of like, she's going through a lot. Can we see that, please?
Right.
And so I think when she did that with the pressure, I'm saying like with the pressures of essentially giving birth to Christ.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
She's brought this guy about. Yeah. Great super pump.
Yeah. She blew me away.
Retweet.
She blew me away.
Retweet.
Totally. And also, I didn't want you to stop talking just then, just so you know. I was not
that's
talking
fine.
because I was very interested in what you were saying.
Yeah. Also, I just need more of Javier Bardem.
Always.
They gave us as much
In
Stilgar
general,
as in this part of the book, but I just can't wait. It's like, hey, if we get part 2, you're gonna get a lot of this dude, but he's pretty perfect. It wasn't until we played Extra Credit yesterday that I was realizing, of course, with these massive names that are in this movie, they've been in movies together before, but having going back to the dialogue between Josh Brolin and Javier Bardem is kind of funny after seeing No Country for Old Men. And then Zendaya and Rebecca Ferguson were in Greatest Showman together.
Totally. Dude, Zendaya as Chani is, I think, going to pan out to be a great choice. We don't get a lot of Chani here, but I think, so far,
take the
I'm actually
bag.
convinced
Way to
that
go,
she's
Zendaya.
not. Yeah, for real.
Easiest millions you've ever made.
I don't know if it's true. I read she was on set for 4 days.
Yeah, I mean, she's got to have the highest ratio of box
You know
office
why she
ball
probably
dollars
was on
to
set
lines.
for 4 days? Because she had to spend all that time on the Spider-Man set at probably similar scheduling.
That's probably true. Yeah, I'm starting to be convinced in my life that Zendaya is also never the wrong choice for a role. You
just gotta look at Michi. Who else could have done what she did with Michi?
Who else could have
No idea.
done the transformative power of Michi? Yeah, man, the women of Dune coming in strong.
Yeah, totally.
And that's something that you had to lean into too, because Frank Herbert, when he's writing this, that's not changing, right? This isn't something to flex to mirror what's going on like in world culture in general of like, this was actually a big part of the book.
Yeah, I was wondering that because it's pretty. I mean, that era of science fiction, that era in general in fiction, is pretty heavy on boys. It's just boy time all the way down.
And then when it's girls, it's objectification.
Or objectification.
Exactly.
Lady Jessica in the
prop for
novel
boys.
is a
kicks as much butt as she did in
bad
this.
EMFer, dude.
She holds Stilgar and everything. She like is the reason that they say, "Oh shoot, maybe we should take them seriously."
Cool.
Because she absolutely,
Yeah, her whole thing is basically because if this wasn't
kinda
clear,
Leia.
the Bene Gesserit, it's not like a bloodline. It's like Hogwarts. They're a school of witches that have decided that they are going to send concubines to every house to try
Sure.
and have
It's-
the Messiah and also to make more pure bloodline witches.
Yeah, it's more like the Sorcerer's Lodge from The Witcher.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Which
Perfect.
I guess the Sorcerer's Lodge
Is more like the Bene
Lodge of
Gesserit.
Sorceresses is the Bene Gesserit.
Yeah, sure. But so she is like, she's not just like someone's mom that comes along for the ride. She is
Yeah.
more than capable on her own. For sure.
May I, and this is tricky, may I super pump and super dumb right now?
Sure.
Right now, go. Just both of them. Fire it off, and then I'm actually going to hang up the Zoom call, and you guys could do your nerd crap without me.
I'm looking forward to it.
My super pump is the audacity of this movie.
Sure.
I cannot believe Warner Brothers greenlit this movie. This is not a proven franchise from a not very financially successful director. I mean, Denis is phenomenally talented, and I
of
love
course, yeah.
every single one of his movies. None of them make any money. And I can't believe Warner Brothers was like, hire all these big names and big faces and make the biggest, loudest, weirdest non-franchise movie that you can.
Yeah.
And we're going to pay for it. That is insane to me. I think it's a huge, huge risk to make this movie from a studio standpoint.
Absolutely.
Because I'm the target audience and I barely liked it. I mean, I liked it. Don't get me wrong. It was fantastic. But I had to kind of work uphill to engage with it.
Sure.
Because it is so strange and it is so dense. And the novel is pretty typically considered unfilmable. And so the fact that Denis went for it and it works as well as it does is a complete shock to me. And so that's a easy super pump. I think there was, from the second I mean, it was about 5 minutes into the movie when I was like, oh my gosh, this works. And it's working and I'm in.
Right.
And I can't believe Denis did this. Just I'm completely shocked at how well it all hangs together.
I was asking, I'm glad you said this works, because I was asking myself maybe every 15 minutes, I was like, is this working?
And to be honest, that's the reason I didn't read the book.
Yeah.
It's been on my to-read list for a decade at this point. But once I started hearing rumors that the movie was actually going to happen, I kind of was like, you know what? I want to not read the book, and I want to see if I can judge whether or not this works.
Interesting. You took the opposite approach of me.
Appreciate you being that sacrifice.
Exactly.
there.
Well, that's the approach I usually take, right? Like if I find out something is going to be made into a movie, I try to get the book first and read it so that I can go and be fully in. But it wasn't
How the Grinch Stole
entirely
Christmas.
Exactly. Yeah. That was a slog, by the way. That was hard to get through. We don't need all those pages, Dr. Seuss. I just understand that he's a lean, green, mean Christmas munching machine. But yeah, it wasn't entirely for our podcast that I did that. But I also know it can get sort of exhausting when all of us are on the exact same page and know all the exact same things. And so, yeah. So yeah, that was a unique way for me to approach an adaptation of a book. Normally I would have read it, and the fact that it works is a huge super pump. My super dump is that one little word that we have all three been saying this entire episode, and that word is if.
Yeah, sure.
If part 2 happens, if we get to make Dune part 2 and potentially even Dune part 3, if I feel myself being hesitant to engage with this because I don't know if it'll ever get finished. I mean, the chairman of Warner Bros. Says, hey, it's going to happen. I'm also old enough to remember the time they announced like 20 DC movies stretching through the end of 2025. And
Right.
3 of those
Not so
are happening.
much. Yeah.
If it was any studio other than Warner Bros., if it was New Line, right? If it was any, well, I guess Warner Bros. Owns New Line. If it was really anybody other than Warner Brothers, I would believe them when they say that this is for sure happening and we're for sure getting a Dune 2. But the fact that it is, as of yet, not greenlit, it is not shot. We'd have to rebuild sets, rebuild costumes. Like, we didn't shoot it at the same time as Lord of the Rings. Like, I think it's hard for me to know what it would have felt like to watch the Fellowship of the Ring being unsure if the Two Towers would ever get made, much less Return of the King.
Right.
I think I would feel like it was incomplete. And we talked last week about the guy who, Carter, you said in your showing or something, there was the guy who was like, wait, that's it? When the Fellowship ended. Because nothing really happens in that movie other than they decide what they're going to do for the next two movies. And I sort of feel that way walking out of Dune. Nothing really happened here other than to set up the dominoes that were like, it's going to fall. Zendaya's going to be a great choice. It feels like this was a trailer for the rest of the story. And I don't know, man. I don't know that there's a way to make this without it feeling that way, other than for me to have confidence that like, okay, Dune Part 2 is coming out next year, you know?
Right.
I don't know.
I was looking up articles because it does feel like, granted, it's a multi-million-dollar decision by Warner Brothers to decide whether or not officially to greenlight Dune 2. There's a lot of variables that have to go into place there. And they could even say that, and some people can say, sorry, I can't be a part of this anymore. I know I was, but I can't now.
Right.
But yeah, it's still all the news right now is still just a bunch of people being like, it has to happen, right? Because of what the CEO said, some 24 hours ago.
Yeah.
That it's like, well, there's a second part. We kind of have to do it. And so they're like, oh, he means it. But there's still nothing solidied. The first article that came up was Dune sequel. Here's what Dune Part 2 will be about if it happens.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Which is
that kind
just,
of stuff,
I hate it. That's an awful feeling.
The fact that that's the prevailing story, I think is going to hurt the box office numbers of this. If you've been listening to the show at all in 2021, you'd know that I have a little bit of hesitancy around the financial success of Dune.
What's tough with me, though, here's why I'm on this side. I'm glad we get to bring it up again to rehash it. But I just feel like right now, especially our generation. So are y'all Gen Z or millennials?
Millennials.
Okay, so like millennials, Gen Z, just American culture in general is very Kickstarter. There's so many things that just happen because people are economically willing it to happen. Like they're just paying for it. And so I think this could be on a grander scale, like people just really pushing. It's like, let's do it. Why not Dune 2? I think the best part about it, and it goes hand in hand, and this is, part of me just loves how unique of an experience this is in general, just in movies, to be living through this, as much of a stress as it is. But it feels like this is going to have such a good amount of momentum because I was so pleased at how well they did.
Yep.
I think it's a totally different story, and it's a different real fear, more realistic fear if this wasn't done well.
Yeah. Or if it was just
then
okay.
it's like, if they do another one, it's just a money grab. And then my motivations to see the second one, if part one was bad, is just like, I don't want to. Like, I hate that they went and did this again. I'm starting to think Hobbit now.
Right.
I'm like, we shouldn't do this. So I don't know.
I don't know, man. I think the flip side is like, imagine I don't have friends who've read the book. Imagine I'm not super into movies, because I think the people Warner Brothers needs to convince are the people who just kind of go see every big and loud blockbuster because it's big and loud.
Sure.
Not because of any deep investment in the source
I don't
material.
agree. I think this is the Costco $1.50 hot dog of movies. It's a loss leader. I think that Warner Brothers earns a boost in public opinion and trust in audiences that are losing trust because of the mishandling of the Harry Potter franchise and the DC franchise. But I mean, obviously not box office wise, but critically. There is a balance that has to be struck. And I think that this is one that they earn so much goodwill from fans that it might be worth it to make a good movie and a good sequel to that movie that don't necessarily shatter the bank.
I'm hoping they can channel that emotional high that they no doubt felt whenever Zack Snyder's Justice League was released, of just like, this is not a financial decision, but the goodwill that it gains our company is worth more.
Right.
Than we're spending on this, But
also, they own HBO Max, so it was a financial decision, but I hear what you're saying.
Sure.
I think culturally, we're in a place right now where we have nuclear levels of technologically driven groupthink. I think if we also want to play into it's because everyone else wants it to happen, I think it doesn't matter if people have read the book or if they're ready to understand it. I think that comes into play of like going ahead and getting big names in this movie. I think there's a lot of things that could factor into it. It's to the point now where I'm just talking like I just want it to make money. I don't care if people like it. I want a part 2 because it is a money thing. I don't think Warner Brothers gets to, it's funny with the streaming stuff. Do you have to pay for Dune to stream? Is it like what Disney Plus does? So it's just free. That's what's awful.
If you have,
but evidently with all the Squid Game stuff for Netflix, it's not like that doesn't make them money. Like,
dude, I'm telling you, I think there's almost no way this doesn't get a sequel. I just think there's almost no way. I think that the outrage that they would face for making something this good and then just canning it because they didn't hit a box office goal, I just don't think there's any way they can do this.
But imagine the confidence you feel in the studio that you feel in New Line Cinemas at the end of The Fellowship of the Ring, or the confidence you felt in Marvel Studios and Disney at the end of Infinity War.
Sure.
It's like, this story is not even close to over. The confidence that once upon a time we all felt in Warner Brothers at the end of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1.
Right. Yeah.
The confidence that this is not over. And maybe it's a character flaw. I do not have that same confidence now.
You know what it is? And it could be the reason why, I like the movie more than the book. I think the biggest outlier is the brilliance and the density of Frank Herbert. Nobody, the percentage of kids around the world, much less kids in America, that dressed up as Paul Atreides for Halloween after the book came out. Lord of the Rings, it has these things like wizards, and it has stuff that we're all pretty relatively familiar with for a long time in lore. And then Frank Herbert does this wild thing that didn't get to be born in the cinema. Like Star Wars was. It didn't get to start with visual stuff. And then they really the audience starts writing the script because of just things that they will into existence. It's just such a unique thing, and it's scary. And I like it and don't like it.
I'm with you on that. I like it and I don't like it. I like sitting in this like anticipation and nerves. There's even a part of me that says if the sequel never gets made, then I will forever talk about how Denis Villeneuve's Dune was completely shafted and was the best part A that never got a part B. There will be conversations about this one way or another. I just feel very confident that a sequel's coming. I really do. It is time to rate this movie, believe it or not. We're going to do that using the scientific cinema scale, which is perfect and as follows. The best thing we could ever say about a movie is own it, don't lend it, buy that poster. The next best thing is buy it. That's followed by rent it and then stream it. After that is forget it. And last, but certainly least, the worst thing you could ever say about a movie.
God hath forsaken us.
I'll go first because I haven't read the book and I want to give my nerd boys space to talk about their rating for this movie. I'm going to rent this movie. I think it's fantastic. I really, really do. If the story was complete, I would be buying 2 posters. If part 2 comes out and it's as good as this, I will retroactively change this rating to buy that poster. You can actually go ahead and bookmark that. I will record a new rating portion and I will drop it in right here. As it stands, though, the story's not done. And it's really, really hard to fully invest in this because I don't trust Warner Brothers. I think the 2 scenarios are this never gets released or it's a surprise drop and part 2 comes out in January. You know what I mean? I think there is
that would be, my brain would shatter.
Wouldn't that be wild, right? It's, I don't know, man. I hate
that you said that.
The fact that it is such a blatant cliffhanger with no, even It Chapter 1, which is the closest thing that's happened recently to this. There was no sequel greenlit at the time that came out, and it audaciously ended with It Chapter 1 as this title card. But that wasn't a cliffhanger. The story was really over.
Dune started with Dune Part 1.
Right. The story really could have been over after It Chapter 1.
What is the Divergent? What's the next one that never got made that was supposed to get made?
Oh, it did get made. They finished out that series with some made-for-TV movies.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Oh, for some reason I thought it never got finished. Whatever,
yeah.
Doesn't matter.
But for that reason, I'm going to rent this movie because it is really amazing and it is worth watching even if it doesn't finish. But it just, I don't know, guys. I'm I still have this hesitancy. And it's not anything about the quality of the movie. It's everything about the real world decisions around what to do next.
Sure. I can go next. I'm buying the poster for Dune. I'm buying the poster for Dune if the sequel comes out and is great. I'm buying the poster for Dune if the sequel never comes out, and I will hang the poster on my wall and talk to everybody about how sad I am that this awesome thing never got finished. It'll just be a fun little collector's item about the best part A without a part B. I'm buying the poster for Dune. This movie was when we didn't even talk about the sandworms. How did we not talk about the sandworms?
We made it to the rating without talking about those big boys.
The first sandworm attack on the spice mine, the spice mining thing, when they were running, they get to the helicopter. When Duke Atreides says, "We got to go get him. We're saving him. Let's go," showing how different he was from the Harkonnens before. They save them. They rise up, and the worm, the Shai-Hulud, swallows the mining rig. I had the thought, it's like they reached into my brain and were like, what movie would this like very much? I am buying the poster for Dune. Yeah. I almost was never in doubt about this.
Our worm introduction was very Spielbergian. It felt like how we got Jaws.
Dude, it reminded me of the bridge in Sicario.
Yeah.
The like, oh, when's it going to happen? Oh, yeah. we got to move. We got to move. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. Do you want to know what my honest thought was when I saw the worm introduction? We missed a golden opportunity by not doing a same-day Patreon release of a review of Tremors on the same day that this movie comes out.
Dang. I love how it looked like a big eyeball, too.
I know.
Very cool. I'm going to buy it because of many things that you've already heard me talk about. But one of those being, if Peter Jackson's Fellowship of the Ring came out and that was it, I would not buy that poster. I wouldn't say that this was, wow, what a great movie, because it has such an abrupt end. I find myself pretty similar here to Doge, to where I'll be messy and come back. I'll come back and buy the poster here. But with this as a standalone thing, even though I have knowledge of what happens at the end, I can't in good confidence buy the poster right now. I just have to buy it. If this is just talking as like a movie podcast for me personally, talking about this movie, it is clearly evident and goes without saying that it could be much more enjoyable. And the other half of that isn't existing yet. That's what makes it more enjoyable. And so I just have to, I can only buy the movie today.
For sure.
But it feels like, what's the chart that, and I wasn't very good at sciencing except for the scientific cinema scale. Mm-hmm. What's the chart where it's like, and then it gets warm enough that the moisture goes into the sky and that makes clouds and then it rains and that's what makes things
like
grow.
The water cycle?
The water cycle. It's like we got half of the water cycle. It's like, oh, that's cool. Storms are amazing. What happens next? How do I get the next one? It's just like, I don't know. It's a pretty cool
chart. Zendaya will probably be a good call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, y'all know I'm a Denis Villeneuve slut, so I'm definitely. Yeah. It was going to be tough for this not to be a poster for me anyway.
I could have called a year ago exactly like the scale degrees of how positive we would each be on this movie.
Yeah, that tracks. I'm going to be a book nerd for 2 seconds as we're wrapping this up.
Be a book nerd.
In the book, when Paul kills, I think his name is Jameis, in that like duel.
Yep.
He cries after he kills him because it's his first kill. And the Fremen are like taken aback. And I think they call it like giving water for the dead because they value moisture and water so highly. They're like shocked that he would just freely give these tears for a dead man. And basically that's a big moment for them of like, oh, he's one of us. If he would give water for one of our dead, he's one of us.
That'll be the beginning of part 2.
But they already left. They already walked away.
Right, but they haven't done the ceremony of his like actual funeral.
Yeah, the last shot was him carrying his body away.
I don't remember the ceremony.
They haven't harvested his body for water yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I bet that happens at the beginning.
Be awesome.
But that would be so awesome.
5 years from now, with visibly older Paul Atreides.
Or January 20th.
You know, they did a pretty good job. All of the older people are fine. It's like, I'm not going to be able to tell the difference between the amount of Javier Bardem eye wrinkles now and 5 years from now. Same with Josh Brolin. And then they went ahead and got people who don't age. They got 2 legitimate like wood elves to play leads in terms of Zendaya and Timmy Chalamet. So I think we're set. I think it could be 6 years from now and we'd be fine.
Well,
7? I don't
Rebecca Ferguson, if it comes out in 5 years, she'll be in her 40s, which by Hollywood standards means she has to only play grandmas.
I mean, she's
Right.
dead. I mean,
But
she's
she'll
going to
just
be the
get
next
the-
Aunt May.
Did you see that Meryl Streep interview where she was like, I turned 40 and only got offered witches? That's so crazy.
That's
Well,
funny.
to end today's
Did you guys
episode-
like, just,
Oh.
I need to ask you, did you like House Atreides?
What? What do you mean?
Huh?
Like, did you like it?
He's got a
House
thing.
Atreides.
He's got a thing.
No, it's not a thing. I'm asking you, did you like House Atreides?
I don't know what that means.
Yes.
Did you like them?
Like as
Like-
the collection of people?
Yeah.
Yes.
How about Atreides nuts?
Yeah. There it is. To end today's episode, I'd like for each of us to say our names and if we liked that Doge did that or not. For 2 Chunks and a Hunk, I'm Jordan. No.
Doge, I'm still giggling about it.
What did you just say?
He said, I'm Doge and I'm still giggling about it.
I'm Carter. I think I did. I'd have to see the second half of the joke.
If there's a
though.
second half of it, you'd bump it up
I'd
to a
have to see
poster.
the second part of the joke. I'm not sure.
Tis the season for those irresistible ginger thins, cozy blankets for cuddling by the fire, and making home warm and welcoming. For one-stop holiday shopping, visit your local IKEA or ikea-usa.com/holiday.